Hey everybody! Today's lesson should be pretty easy to complete. You need to work on your conclusion and you need to include your citations of your sources for the information that you've included in your main paragraphs. And then you will also need to create your works cited page. I'm going to send you some links to how to figure out how to do the citations and the works cited, and I'll show you in my document as well where I put some of those internal citations to give credit to the sources that I used. And then the conclusion we'll talk about in just a minute. But before we get to doing all of that, let's take a quick trip to the Corgi Cam to see what Piper has been up to today. It's been pretty hot outside, so I think she spent much of the day laying low and trying to stay cool. So let's take a look at the Corgi Cam to see what Piper is up to. So if you remember last time, you worked on your introduction, and the introduction was meant to be kind of like a movie trailer or like a preview to a movie to give your reader an idea of everything that they were going to be learning about in your paper. What I want you to think about for the conclusion is this idea that the conclusion is sort of the takeaway. What is the lesson that you want your readers to take with them after they've read your paper? So they've read all that information, and what is it that you want them to know, that little nugget of knowledge that you want to share with them that they can take with them after having read your paper. So let's take a look at the one that I drafted for my topic on frogs. So here we are, and the heading for mine, I didn't want to just label it conclusion because I thought that would be pretty boring. So instead, I tried to think of it in terms of what would be the next steps. Again, my paper was more of a problem solution, cause effect type paper, so I wanted to leave readers with the idea that there's still work to be done. So I titled my conclusion, What You Can Do to Help Frogs. Where do we go from here? Frogs are important species in our ecosystems around the world. They serve many purposes and they are amazing indicators of the health of our planet. Scientists have shown the many ways that frogs are helpful to humans, and they have also shown how they can be helpful to frog survival by keeping track of their numbers and the declines in their populations. That seems like a they. I'm not really sure my readers are going to know who we're talking about here. So I'm going to change this they to humans. They've also shown how humans can be helpful to frog survival by keeping track of their numbers and the declines in their populations. In doing so, these scientists have been able to help solve some of the environmental problems that impact the health of amphibians. Some of these problems include air and water quality, issues that also affect humans. Something as simple or mindless as putting excess fertilizer on our lawns can have dramatic impacts on our streams and lakes. This influx of chemicals into the environment has a very negative impact on the creatures who call it home, and that impact extends to humans as well. You can get involved in your own communities by participating as a citizen scientist and helping to document how frog populations are doing where you live. Maybe I want to emphasize the you. I'm going to italicize that. Taking this small step to help make our environment a healthy one will ensure that our frogs will be able to take giant leaps in the future. I was kind of thinking that one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Quote, but changed it a little bit to focus on frogs. So you'll notice in my conclusion that I really tried to leave the reader thinking about what is it that they could do, some kind of action. Your paper might not be designed that way. If you're doing a Q&A type of paper, question and answer, your conclusion might provide some other kinds of answers that maybe you didn't get to in the rest of your paper. It might provide the reader with some information about where they could go to next to do their own research on the topic. I'm thinking of Chloe's paper on New York City Fashion Week. Maybe after reading her paper, by the conclusion, she might give her readers some suggestions for if they want to attend the Fashion Week, what that might involve, or if they're an aspiring fashion designer, what might be involved to help that person get their ideas onto the stage at Fashion Week in New York City. So there are a lot of different possible options for the conclusion, but what you want to do is leave your reader with something to take away. If you think of it, we talked a really long time ago about this process of teaching through writing. So you're the teacher. What do you want your readers to learn and to take with them? And that should be sort of the message in your conclusion. Okay, now if we look at the citations, I'm going to go back into the text here, kind of show you what I've done with those. So I highlighted them in blue. So basically anywhere in my text that I took information from my notes that stood out as not my own thinking or my own work. In my case, pretty much all of the sources that I had authors. So I put the author's last name, and then I put the page number where I found it. In one case, I had an author that in the article really didn't have page numbers. So I just put the author's last name. And this author was the same for the image as for the information that I got. And then there's one other example I wanted to show you where I, instead of using the parenthetical notation at the end of the sentence, I actually put the author's name right into the sentence. That is also giving credit to the source. So instead of putting, I could have put Briggs here, but instead of doing that, I put the author's name right into the sentence. According to Helen Briggs, outbreaks of the disease rhinovirus are spreading and becoming more dangerous for frogs, etc., etc. So there are some different ways of including the information. Remember, these purple highlights are from last time to show some turns of phrases that I use to help guide my reader. Here again, you'll see that I have Briggs highlighted because that is the source that goes with that image. So all of your images should be cited, as well as any information within your paragraphs. If you're having trouble figuring out where to put your citations or how to do that, just shoot me an email or let me know that you need some help with that. It's not really that tricky to do, but sometimes the hardest part can be figuring out, well, what information do I actually have to include? Especially if there's not an author's name. Sometimes that can get a little more challenging. But again, I'm going to put a link to a site that will show you how to cite a website or a book, or if you have some other information, it'll give you some ideas about that. We have already done this process when we did our argumentative essays on recess, and we included those sources in our papers. So if you don't remember how to do that, you might go back into your recess paper and look at how you did it there, because you have done this already. And then I will also take you to, or give you a link for a site for how to set up your works cited. The number one most important thing to remember for that is it's got to be in alphabetical order. Has to be left justified for the top line, and the second or third lines are indented or tabbed once. and that you include all of the sources that you used. Okay, so those are the three things today: your conclusion, citing your sources, and creating your works cited. And if all of that should get your paper draft to completion by Friday. That's our goal, so that I can look at those over the weekend, make sure you have them back on Monday, and then you can make any revisions that you need to, additions, fix things up. And then we'll work next Monday on creating the slide we'll work next Monday on creating the slide for the slideshow so that others can see what you've been researching. Okay, so we're getting to the end. It's really important that you have a completed draft by Friday that I can look at. All right, if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. All right, good luck.